Excuse me, honey. Oh, sorry. Want to get me?
What do you need for your call?
This.
Coffee.
Good afternoon and welcome. We're so excited for this, for the kickoff of the Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council. Before we begin, I'll start us off with a couple of logistics reminders. So first, today's meeting is being held in the virtual space, and it is accessible via computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone. We have live captioning and ASL interpretation, and you can enable closed captions by selecting the CC icon on your toolbar. Lastly, please note that this meeting is being recorded and we're going live on Facebook. The slides, transcript, and recording link will be posted to the California Health and Human Services Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council webpage within the next 5 days. We are saving some time at the end of today's agenda for public comments. So if you're joining us by phone, you may select *9 to be added to the queue. For those joining by webinar, select the raise hand icon to join the queue and we'll open your line. You may also submit written public comment through the Q&A icon on your toolbar or by emailing engage@aging.ca.gov. Please note that while we're welcoming public comments, which will be maintained as public record, committee members will not be able to take questions during the program or public comment period. And with that, I will pass it off to California Department of Aging's Director and Committee Chair, Susan DeMorris.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome everybody to our inaugural meeting of the California Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council. It is a momentous day, and I want to thank, there are many of you on this call who have been working to make this day happen for years. So I'm just so excited that we're all here together, and I truly hope that someday we look back on this date and say, you know, that's the day that California took it to the next level. That's when it started. So congratulations to all of our appointees. I am so excited and humbled to work with all of you subject matter experts and advocates. I expect to learn a lot from this group. Let's see. I want to thank our state and stakeholder partners as a coordinating council. This is a collaborative effort. CDA, the Department of Aging, is honored to lead this, but we are doing this in close collaboration and partnership with other state departments and agencies. And I'll be introducing you to our co-chair, Jennifer, momentarily. A very warm welcome to our public members. I see that we have over 101 as of this moment, 101 people on the call today. So we welcome the public, and I think as this group continues to meet quarterly, those numbers will grow. I'm proud to be joined by a number of people from the Department of Aging this afternoon. We have a number of our staff here. Amanda Lawrence, who many of you know as the project director for the Master Plan for Aging. Amanda makes all of this happen and has been working closely with many of you before this was even an official coordinating council. So my thanks to Amanda. Jeremy Avila, who is our chief counsel at the Department of Aging. You'll be hearing from Jeremy shortly. Blanca Castro, California's brand new state long-term care ombudsman, still in her first month. Blanca, welcome to you. And Sarah Steenhausen, who is our new deputy director of aging policy, research, and equity. And a very special welcome to Susan Rodriguez, who is here in her new capacity, leading the Office of the Patient Representative, something you'll be learning more about. So this is a group, the Coordinating Council, as our secretary, Dr. Mark Galley, who leads the California Health and Human Services Agency, has been saying, you know, we're in the silo busting business. And so we look to all of you to help put the person at the center of our conversations and make sure that we're talking about the older adult and the person living with a disability That is our focus of this group, and then how government can organize around that person. So today and future meetings will be silo busting, and my first order of business in that is to introduce to you, I'm so delighted to be joined this afternoon by Jennifer Euler. Jennifer is the Chief Assistant Attorney General with the California Department of Justice. She leads the Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse. And since joining, and now there's a whole nother slew of acronyms that we get to learn outside of the HHS world. Since joining DMFEA in 2012, she's brought civil and criminal actions against individuals and corporations in the nursing home industry. Prior to becoming the Chief Assistant Attorney General, she was the Supervising Deputy Attorney General of the Facilities Enforcement Team. The focus of the Facilities Enforcement Team is on prosecuting systemic elder abuse and neglect that occurs in residential facilities throughout the state of California. Before joining the Department of Justice, Jennifer worked in private practice representing plaintiffs in civil matters in both federal and state courts. Her practice ranged from federal class actions, insurance bad faith actions, wage and hour, employment law, personal injury actions, elder abuse, and wrongful death. Prior to her civil practice, Jennifer was a criminal defense attorney practicing in all state courts throughout Northern California. Jennifer received her JD from the University of California, Hastings College of Law, and I'm pleased to introduce all of you to Jennifer and to welcome her this afternoon.
Thank you, Susan. It's always so embarrassing to listen to your bio being told to everybody. So if I'm blushing a little bit, please forgive me. Before I launch into it, I will also apologize. I speak incredibly fast, so I'm going to do my best to slow down so that everybody can hear and get what I'm saying. So I just want to kick it off by saying I am so pleased to be here today and to join you in the launch of the first ever California Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council. To successfully tackle such widespread issues as elder justice and disability justice, no single agency can act alone. We need a whole of government approach. And so today, with all of us gathered here, this is truly a milestone. Abuse and neglect of elder and dependent adults is a priority for myself, for my division, and for the Attorney General. We know that the issue is multifaceted and it requires a coordinated and collaborative response to build and strengthen systems that ensure the financial and physical safety and well-being for older and dependent adults and their families, and to allow us to prosecute those that would seek to harm that well-being. As the older adult population continues to grow, so too will the number of adults requiring nursing homes or long-term care. Together, we need to proactively prioritize and invest in the prevention of physical and financial abuse of older adults in facilities, such as skilled nursing facilities and other long-term care facilities, as well as those in their own homes. To address these growing problems in the growing population, the Office of the Attorney General expanded the former Bureau of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse to become its own division within the Department of Justice. This expansion allows us to work aggressively to protect all Medi-Cal recipients from abuse or neglect, regardless of setting. DMFEA, or Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse, our work focuses on investigating and prosecuting fraud that's perpetrated against the Medi-Cal program by the providers that we have entrusted with our care. DMFEA also investigates and prosecutes the abuse and neglect of Medi-Cal recipients when it occurs in connection to the provision of care. And among those recipients, and very dear to my heart, I guess I would say, are elder and dependent adults, and especially those living in long-term care facilities throughout the state. We've seen an increase in the elder abuse and neglect during COVID-19, and the pandemic really shone a spotlight on those facilities that put profit over people. Anytime during the pandemic, you turn on the news, especially at the height of the pandemic, and you could not go without seeing a story of somebody being abused, neglected, in nursing home facilities. As a result, DMFEA has increased exponentially the number of Operation Safe visits that we conducted in the last year. These visits are intended to bring transparency to an industry that likes to operate behind closed doors. With these unannounced visits into skilled nursing facilities throughout the state, we've been able to uncover and deter acts of isolation, neglect, and mistreatment of elder and dependent adults. The Department of Justice plays an important role in protecting older and dependent adults, but we know we're only one piece in an expansive network, and we cannot be successful in our role without coordination with CalHHS and a whole host of other agencies who are joining us today. A collaborative and multidisciplinary approach, the reason for this very council, is needed to build a statewide prevention, support, and response network that will result in a more just system, ensuring that the most vulnerable among us are protected. I am incredibly happy to be here today, joined by Deputy Attorney General Megan Anderson to represent the Office of the Attorney General, and I know we both look forward to working with all of you very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
I think
Jennifer.
we're going to turn over to roll call. Is that right?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy, for advancing the slide there. Okay, so committee members, I'll be calling your name in the order displayed on the slides. And because today's agenda is pretty tight and we want to make sure we have ample time for discussion, I'll just ask you to respond with a brief here or present for roll call. And also, just because this is our first meeting and we're still learning about each other, please excuse any mispronunciations. And if I do mispronounce your name, please jump in and let us know what the correct way of saying is so we can get it right moving forward. All right, so Tony Anderson.
Here.
Hi, Tony. Diana Boyer.
Here.
Lisa Coleman.
Here.
Achilles Theron.
Here.
Gloria Echeverria. Gloria, are you with us? Joanne Gines or Gines? Joanne? Andrea Higgins?
I'm here.
Thank you. Scarlett Hughes?
Here.
Sherry Johnson Oliveras?
Present.
Liz Logston?
Here.
Lisa Nuremberg? I think I saw Lisa. I think she's here.
Here.
Howard Mcbroom, I think I saw you as well. Hey, Howard. Vivian Baku?
Here.
Nina Musavi?
Here.
Marty Emoto?
Here.
Carla Sonoto?
We just heard from her.
Carla's here, but on a call.
Got it. Okay, I'm not looking at the chat, so thank you for that. Appreciate it. Scott Perello?
Here.
Michael Reiser? Michael, are you with us? Okay, Ellen Schmeeding?
Here.
Hey, Ellen. Edwin Smith?
I am here.
Great. Janie Whiteford, I believe, is here.
Here.
Astrid Zuniga?
Sorry, I don't have much of a voice, but I'm here.
Thank you. All right, and for our state, federal, and county committee membership, Director Susan DeMorris is here. Stacy Alamo Mixon?
Here.
Jason Black? Jason Black? Blanca Castro?
Here.
Great. I know Jennifer Euler's here. How about Faye Gordon? Faye Gordon? I know Mark is not here today, but I think we have a fill-in from Lisa Mongen.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Linda Gledhill?
Here.
Kimberly Kirkmeyer?
Here.
Bruce Lim?
Here.
Leslie Morrison?
Here.
Claire Ramsey.
Here.
Richard Ramirez.
Here.
Okay, and I think that concludes roll call, but I'll just pause to see if I missed any members. Feel free to unmute and jump in. Wonderful. And I think I hand it back to Director Susan DeMorris.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who are here and made time on your calendars today to join us. We're looking forward to a wonderful conversation, and we can go ahead and move ahead to the next slide. We wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the council purpose. This is today's agenda. So we've got just under 3 hours remaining. We did our very best to pull together an agenda for the first time to try to guess the flow of the timeline. So bear with us for the first meeting. We might run over, we might run under. It was very important to the team that pulled this together from representing different departments to establish a baseline because we're all coming together for the first time. So there might be more reporting out at today's meeting than we will do in the future, but that was really intended that we all get on the get the same base level of understanding before we proceed. So we'll be hearing from Kim Rutledge and Jeremy Avila about the elder and disability justice landscape work that's been happening for well over a year. We want to make sure there's plenty of time for council members to contribute, ask questions and exchange. Then we'll be hearing 2 updates after our 10-minute break, and we want to be sure everyone logs off and turns off the camera and takes a break before we come back and hear from Lisa and Vivian. I think that'll be a good grounding for all of us. And then we'll hear from Amanda Lawrence about how we will work together as a group and what is most productive and how we can move this process forward. And then of course, there will be time at the end for public comment. So that's what we're looking at for today's agenda. And we'll move ahead to the council purpose, role, and structure. And I'll take a look at the next slide. So this is our goal, our charter as a group coming together for the first time. For those, I'll go ahead and read this part out because it's so central to our work. The goal of the Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council is to increase coordination and develop recommendations to prevent and address the abuse, neglect, exploitation, and fraud perpetrated against older adults and adults with disabilities. And how we came to be, I mentioned that many people on this council have been working in coalition prior to the master plan and were hugely influential over the master plan for aging, serving on stakeholder groups, serving on subcommittees, and producing recommendations, formal recommendations to that group. The Master Plan for Aging was launched a year ago this month. We celebrated the 1-year anniversary just last Friday. And for those who aren't familiar with the Master Plan for Aging, it lays out 5 bold goals, 23 strategies, and 132 action-ready initiatives for the 2-year period of 2021 through 2022. The Master Plan itself is a 10-year blueprint for our state. So we have just concluded year 1. We have 9 more years, and this council is key to the Master Plan for Aging and that next 9 years. So there is a strategy E, you'll find it in the Master Plan, protection from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And there are 5 key initiatives beneath strategy E. Thank you, Norbert. We shared in the chat for anyone who's not familiar yet with the Master Plan for Aging. So one of the initiatives established this council. So the wording might have been slightly different, but it called for the creation of a coordinating council. And that is this group. And we're so proud that in 1 year's time from the launch, that we already have a council that's up and meeting today and has 22 distinguished members who are appointed from all over California, representing diverse backgrounds, interests, and experience. Next slide. Great. So of the 5 bold goals, goal 3 is titled Equity and Inclusion, Not Isolation. And that's where you will find the initiatives that underpin this work here today. So there are five initiatives here. I won't read these to you, but if you're not familiar, we'll just take a moment to look at the screen. The first one, today, we created the statewide elder. The verbiage is from the master plan, but a key distinction is it is an elder and disability justice coordinating council. So we expanded the focus beyond what was named in the initiative number 3. And so going forward, our focus will be older adults and people with disabilities. And then the 4 other initiatives, 94 is to review the roles of licensing, long-term care ombudsman, and APS. Initiative 95 is to assess adult protective services capacity. Initiative 96 assesses the needs and capacities of local public guardians, public conservators, and public advocates. And Initiative 97 assess the needs and capacities of legal services for older adults. So that is our charge from the Master Plan for Aging. And we will start there, but no doubt with so many experts, we will go beyond that with this coordinating council. We shouldn't feel limited to that. Concurrent to the master plan, and I believe because of the master plan, we've seen some incredible investments in last year's budget that support this work and strengthen our state's capacity to do this work. Just a couple of examples. You met Susan Rodriguez earlier, who joins us. This is an example of something that was proposed, funded, and now there is a lead executive at the Department of Aging who heads up the Office of the Patient Representative. In the Department of Aging's Older Adult Recovery and Resiliency Fund, there were a variety of initiatives that helped with isolation, and you'll see here a behavioral health warm line. Some of you are familiar with Friendship Line, digital connections, elder and disability abuse prevention, and investments in legal services. Next slide. This is perhaps the most significant in the budget, and definitely as we get to the survey results, the expansion of adult protective services, $70 million in general fund support, and redefining elder as an adult 60 and older, where previously had been 65 and older. And then also the Department of Social Services Home Safe program, $92.5 million in investments there. So next slide. All right. So this gets to how we will organize ourselves. And we propose that we meet quarterly. It works well that we're starting in January. Please take note of our upcoming dates, and you should have those on your calendar as well as coordinating council members. The Department of Aging will chair this effort, but as you saw from the roll call, we are not doing this alone or in isolation. We're supported by a variety of Health and Human Services, Office of Emergency Services, AG, Department of Justice, and this will be stakeholder led. So this is really your committee. And we will be looking to you for direction and focus and recommendations and ideas on how we can support you in doing that work. We're incredibly grateful that the Master Plan for Aging, the long-term services and supports recommendations made this a priority. And all of that work was done by volunteers, by stakeholders, by advocates, and public members. And here we are a year later. So we really expect this to be a working council. And we've already seen that demonstrated because 17 of 22 of you answered the first survey that we asked of you. And we have really strong attendance today. So we will be looking for you about where you want to focus, what the priorities are, and how we can support you in that work. You see the state members that are listed here, and there may be others brought in as we expand the work. Federal administration for community living will be engaged, and each of you as members represent at least these categories. Some of you represent several of them, and apologies if we left off a main category. And then this is an official committee of the California Health and Human Services Agency. So you will find information at the Cal HHS committees page about our work. So I will pause there before we talk about the survey results to ask if there are any questions or comments about the council structure or purpose from any of our council members. Not seeing any hands raised. Okay. So what we did, and I want to thank everyone who did respond on the next slide. Many of you serve on a number of committees, work groups, task forces, and I'm sure you have strong opinions about what you like and don't like and what works and doesn't work. So we started by asking what members wanted to get out of this. And we gave 3 options. So maybe there are things that you want to get out of this group that we didn't think of, and we'd want to hear that from you today. The leading response was to provide formal policy recommendations to the state related to elder and disability justice. That gave us a key insight into how we want to use our time together and encourage this to be a working committee, and to recognize that in quarterly meetings of a few hours, we probably will not get to the recommendations that we want to see produced by this group. So to really encourage, if there are formal policy recommendations that come out of this group, that there will likely be work done in between meetings. To articulate a vision and lay out a path for California, that was the second rating or second ranking. And we're going to hear a little bit later in the agenda about one vision and blueprint for our state. And the group may decide to adopt that, or to do something independent, or to just leave that be. And this was the most revealing to us, because it is to serve as a platform. We didn't know if the group wanted to have this as a place to exchange best practices and for you to hear from state government officials, local government officials, federal officials. And that's really what we're taking from this survey, is that you would like to inform state government, local government, and federal officials when we have our time together. And that's really our hope as well, that this is a true advisory body, and that you are bringing information and resources and recommendations and suggestions to these meetings. So we'll move to the next slide. We sent all of you a survey, and as I mentioned, 17 out of 22 of you responded to the survey, and we thank you for that, for taking that additional time. And the topics that were provided in the survey were a combination of a variety of issue briefs, blueprints, policy recommendations to the master plan. So it was a conglomeration of the leading on the record recommendations that have been made over the last 2 years. And Amanda grouped those by theme and topic area, and that was the basis for the survey that you received. So based on the 17 out of 22 who did respond, the top 5 priorities that were offered were adult protective services, improved data collection, enforcement of existing laws and prosecution of violations, long-term care, decision-making, and legal protections. So that's really just to set the stage for today's conversation. We're not wedded to this, but to give you a temperature reading on the group so that we can hit the ground running today. And let's see. Our focus, I mentioned earlier that it will be person-centered. So we will all do our very best to bring this back to who the intended audience is. And that is the older adult and the person living with a disability. To be data-driven. So wherever possible, we want to look to data, facts to guide us. And where data doesn't exist, we want to call that out and try to change that. And then across all of our work to remain equity focused. So I will stop there. And now we get to hear a bit, before we invite Kim and Jeremy, were there any comments or feedback on the survey or what was just shared? Not seeing any. All right. So then I'm so happy to introduce two rock stars, Kim Rutledge and Jeremy Avila from our team at CDA, who have been doing work in advance of this meeting. In Kim's case, for well over a year, pulling together the elder and disability justice landscape. So we'll start with Kim. Kim, thank you so much for being here today and welcome.
Thank you. And actually, we're starting with Jeremy. So
great. Well, welcome to Jeremy.
Thank you, Susan. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here with you today. As Susan and Kim and our team members and colleagues here at CDA know, this is one of my favorite things about getting to serve as chief counsel. I began my career as a prosecutor for 2 different counties working on elder abuse and domestic violence cases. So the topic of elder and disability justice is it's a topic very near and dear to my heart, and I look forward to all the great work that this group is going to be doing and participating with you. So we can hop to the next slide. And what I want to do is give you a little bit of an update on where things stand and what we've been doing. Again, I am a big evangelist, and I love to brag about all the great work that we do here at the state. And I think one of the great things about either being at the state or getting to work in partnership with the state is the incredible convening power that we have. And that's, I think, a great intro to this slide to talk about what we have been doing and where things stand right now. And I'm catching myself because, like Jennifer mentioned, I myself speak a little too quickly. So I'm slowing down because I want to make sure that everything gets out there and communicated clearly. So what have we been up to? Well, as you may recall, we held our work group sessions a couple months back. The exact number is escaping me right now, but those sessions were not in vain. What we here at CDA have done is, we held those work group sessions as a way of bringing everyone together, learning about the work that everyone is doing, the different perspectives and the different strengths and tools and areas that we each bring to this table, and kind of drawing those connections and understanding how we all can partner in this effort. We shared programs, we shared funding, activities, populations served, and with all of this data, CDA has been able to take that, captured in spreadsheets and other forms that really catalog that information. And the next step now is digging deeper into it, really making those connections, understanding them better, learning how to leverage them better, and then tapping into that network that we have. Starting that conversation was just the beginning. Compiling that data is, not even the midpoint of it. It's all being done for the purpose of getting to advance the ball and progress towards the next steps of what this group is going to be doing. And so there's still more out there that we're going to need to capture, and more partnerships and more network and capacity building that needs to happen. But I'm happy to say on Susan's behalf, and all of CDA, I think we're off to a very good start of building out that preliminary picture of what we need in order to do the big things that are ahead of us. And I will hand it off to Kim, and she can talk a little bit more about what those next steps are.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kim Rutledge. I am the Adult Protective Services Program Liaison here at the California Department of Social Services. And for the past year plus, it has been a really great opportunity to work with our partners at CDA and at the Department of Justice and at the Department of Developmental Services to really pull together all of this work. And I think that the previous slide that Jeremy just walked us through really shows that there is a huge landscape within state government in California around elder justice and disability justice. I believe I was counting the number of little squares on that last slide, and there's 12 different state organizations that we have identified, plus the Administration for Community Living at the federal level, that all touch elder and disability justice in some way. And then the membership of our council, which is made up of representatives from the community, expands that landscape even more. And we have representatives from, even though we did our introductions rather quickly, when we selected the members of the council, we were very careful to really get a broad landscape of representatives for the council, so we could really see how groups work together inside and outside of government and find the best way to really fill in the gaps that exist in the elder justice world. So as we look at our landscape, which is huge, our next steps are going to be to look at a gap analysis, to really look at what organizations, both within government and outside of government, really, how they work together, how they don't work together, how we can do a better job at connecting services and supports to really help this population and help further elder and disability justice in our state. Another thing that we're going to be doing is identify actions that really align with the priorities that were laid out by the council members. As Susan mentioned earlier, there were a handful of topics that really rose to the top. And I think it's really interesting that modernizing adult protective services was the very first topic. The second topic being elder abuse in institutional settings being really important, preventing caregiving abuse, the legal system's role, which is very vast and a huge part of the landscape that those of us who are more on the program side of things don't always think about every day all the time. And so when I think that when we're looking at this whole landscape, there are just lots and lots of pieces, lots of people. And one of the things that in my role in adult protective services that I hear every day from the counties that run that program is that there are challenges in connecting individuals with all of the possible services out there and really bringing everyone together. And so that is really going to be a goal of this group. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to ask our panelists, our council members and state partners to just do a little bit of kind of popcorn style brainstorming about what you see as the gaps, just off the top of your head, in our existing elder and disability justice landscape. So you can either just put a few words in the chat that we can read as we go here, or you can raise your hand by hitting the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen. So starting out right away, I see from Vivian from Justice and Aging, the rural and urban divide, which is huge in this state. I know that as the administrator for APS, we see very, very different issues that affect Los Angeles County, which is basically a nation in and of itself, versus Alpine County, where people are so stretched thin and there's only a handful of social workers. I see state funding for public guardians and conservators, the disconnect between law enforcement, APS, public guardian, and older adults and people living with disabilities. I see the limits of self-determination when someone hits cognitive impairment, which is a big piece of the developmental disability landscape. Difference in response to cases depending on caseworker and county. The importance of ombudsman and facilities. Thank you, Ellen. Processes and outcome data is needed across multiple aging and disability programs to help us plan to fill gaps. Mobile resources that can go out to clients. These are all really great suggestions. When cases are handed off from APS to the ombuds, ensuring continuity between those two entities. Access to legal representation in a variety of cases. These are great. They're coming in almost faster than I can read them. Access to neuropsych evaluations. Improving support for caregivers. Inconsistency of responses based on lack of regional program funding. So we've talked a lot about state entities. There's also a lot of regional and county level programs and resources that are out there that don't always necessarily connect well with everyone else as well. So, oh, I just got a flood of them. Coordination of healthcare for consumers, person-centered thinking, interagency communication, taking the mandated reporter laws more seriously, language barriers for people with disabilities and seniors. So thank you all for all of this. I think that we're going to continue to take notes out of what's coming out in the chat. And really, I'm going to close this piece on the landscape before we go back to Susan and start our discussion of a more broad discussion with the rest of the panel here. The next step is going to be, we're going to be creating several work groups that are going to come out of this work. And one of them will specifically focus on the elder and disability justice landscape. And Amanda is going to be talking us through more of this work group work later on in the meeting. But I think that this is going to be really critical work to look at filling gaps as we move forward. So with that, thank you all for your participation, and we'll go back to Susan and open up a discussion.
Thank you very much, Kim and Jeremy, and thank you to everyone who put items in the chat. So we will be keeping a record of this meeting, and we will summarize all of that so that it can feed into whatever the next steps are and by topic. So at this point, we wanted to be sure, because I know this is not a quiet group, that we allowed time throughout the agenda for you to contribute before we get into our next presentations. And if there aren't thoughts, we'll just move along, but we didn't want to save it all till the end of the meeting. Is there anything that anybody would like to raise or ask about related to anything that's been covered so far? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Review.
And we have a couple. It looks like Marty.
We do. Okay. Now I see them. All right. I don't know who got there first, but we'll go alphabetically. We'll do Marty, and then we'll do Ellen.
Ooh, I like that alphabetical order. Thank you, Marty Yamamoto, family member, California Disability Senior Community Action Network. I'm not sure where this will fall in terms of my question, but will we be talking about what is the state's protocols, statewide through all the different silos in reporting and responding to, incidences or problems of abuse of a person with disabilities or an older Californian. And so in other words, each system has their own protocol, but do we know what those are? You know, whether it's in the regional center system, Medi-Cal, or if you're a provider within the CBAT system, more of an inventory of how does that work? And then when someone does report an abuse, then what happens? And I know some of that was touched upon, but I just trying to get to the whole person, just crossing the silos. Thank you.
So Marty, what I think you just asked is, well, one, I can tell you that that won't be shared today.
Yeah, I figured that.
But two, you know, are you asking what is the path, the expected pathway for different scenarios and how they should work? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and also for us and maybe the state agencies and all of us as partners to identify what are the existing protocols now that we believe are in place. Because obviously if there are things in place and are not working, that leads to a different, problem or area or challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And we know there's processes that don't work. Things don't get reported for whatever reasons. And, like you said, this is a partnership to try to make things move forward. So.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, I knew we were not going to get to today.
Ellen, and then Carla, and then Jamie.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's a great honor to be with all of you today. I just want to put in a plug for the Adult Protective Services training. That is such an important way of elevating the discipline. And I know it's been something that's been a crucial support for counties. And really, many of the staff that join APS come from all over backgrounds. And to have the training in this specific area, which they may not get as part of their educational benefit, is super important. And then I was listening and really paying attention to the part about persons asking for more information about who to refer to, the APS workers. So I think trying to define what the continuum of care looks like at the line level and how to access those parts of the continuum would be really important. And then I have about 90 other priorities, but I'll give up my turn right now.
Thank you. Go ahead, Carla.
I'm Carla Pedicinoto. I'm a geriatrician and palliative medicine physician, a professor of medicine at UCSF, and a researcher in loneliness and isolation. My question is, or comment as a placeholder for as we think about our work together, is that, amongst my colleague clinicians, I think there's a growing mistrust of what happens when we report. No offense at all to my colleagues at APS, given the massive workloads and how huge of a problem this is. But, as we think about how we're addressing this, is how do we reinstall trust that reporting is still important, even if we don't see the action that we think needs to happen. But I really do think that this is a critical issue for healthcare providers.
Thank you. Janie, and then Diana.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with everybody today. I really would like to know and have us look at how we're going to get this information out to the general public. I think a lot of the issues that we're going to be talking about, all of us on this committee know about them, and the state knows about them. And our work is going to be working together to alleviate a lot of these things. But I think it's really important that the general public understand what a huge issue this is and how can we make that happen, because our educational process is going to take the general public, not just us. So I would like that to be part of our conversation.
Thank you, Janie. Diana?
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be joining everybody. Ellen, certainly appreciate the plug on the APS training. CWDA with Justice and Aging co-sponsored the expansion last year for APS. because we wanted and knew that we needed to act earlier in a much more prevention-oriented focus to provide and deliver services. But that's not to say that we should be doing this alone. In fact, we are very cognizant of an APS staff person as a representative of a county and a government agency, and how that interaction can go. And we hope it's always positive, but we're also very mindful of the equity issues in all of our human services programs, including APS. And so I would hope that we will also touch upon some of the race and equity issues through our conversations as a group. And also being mindful that APS does not ever act alone. And we want and hope that we are just simply a small extension of a much broader, robust community of supports and services that's available to older adults and persons with disabilities.
Thank you. Welcome, Tony. You're next, and then we'll hear from Scarlett.
Tony Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of Valley Mountain Regional Center for people with developmental disabilities. And I just am really thankful to be on this committee, as well as others have expressed. I'm really was really impressed that you shared those two documents with us from the advocacy community, and I think that's a unique thing for government committees like this to do. Just to throw them out there. There are many ideas on there that I can't wait for us to get into. But one thing that is on my mind is it's sort of the intersection of aging and developmental disabilities in particular, is the amount of people we have, seniors who are caring for people with developmental disabilities themselves. So aging caregivers supporting their family member with a developmental disability. And I know it's other disabilities and other people as well, but that's sort of one of the big things that's on my mind quite often these days. So.
Hello, everybody. I'm Scarlett Hughes. I'm the Executive Director for the California State Association of Public Administrators, Public Guardians, and Public Conservators. And the acronym's not any better. So real quick, I just wanted to chime in on what Diana Boyer chatted about, which was the grant for training for APS. Some of you may be unaware that the Public Guardian Conservators have a small part of that grant that we've been able to provide training for our members this past year. Well, actually, this is the second grant, so it's like 3 years now. And our trainings also are available to in-home supportive service workers, mental health workers, and APS workers. And this past year, we've provided over 103 hours online virtual trainings that were offered for all three of those programs. And we have still some more for through March. So just mostly as an FYI, and also just to support the current effort to reestablish that grant this coming fiscal year. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Scarlett. Would anybody else like to add to the conversation? Not seeing any other hands raised this time. Okay. Thank you. So at this point, we're running ahead, and that can change. I know maybe Ellen wants to give her other 90 ideas. That can change on a moment's notice, but I wonder if we might, looking at the agenda, if we might move to Lisa at this point. If Lisa's ready, we could move to that portion of the agenda and then break after Lisa's presentation. Does that work for you, Lisa? And we show that you're on mute right now. Great.
Okay, just give me a minute to get organized. I'm a little, I wasn't quite prepared yet, but
I figured, yeah, we're moving ahead of schedule.
Okay, well, can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound great, Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Susan, and really thanks to your whole team, to Amanda and Jeremy, and to Kim McCoy-Wade, who came before you, who laid the groundwork, and really everyone who's made this this effort and this council possible. It really is an honor and a privilege to be asked to present this afternoon and to tell you a little bit about our work at CEJC. We're currently in the process of updating our 5-year plan. It's called From Blueprint to Benchmarks. And our number one recommendation in our original blueprint was for a state coordinating council. So we're really excited to see this come to fruition and to be part of the process. And it's really especially exciting to see this council launched as part of the Master Plan for Aging. We've made references a couple of times to some of the discussion at the Master Plan anniversary event last week, where there was a lot of talk about silos. And as I think, as a field, elder abuse has always often been siloed, or sometimes even sidelined. We're kind of seen as being a part of the broader aging services network. And so we're really looking forward to working with the other entities in the Master Plan on Aging and its silo busting initiative. And I think that that's really very much in line with the broad view that we have at CEJC about elder justice. And so I want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about how we've framed elder justice. And I think it responds to some of the concerns that have been raised about how we relate to other elements in the aging services network. So we see elder justice on a number of different levels. We see it as a matter of elder rights. And I think that that's really corresponds with, and it's in keeping with the Elder Justice Act, the Federal Elder Justice Act, which was passed in 2010, that really kind of changed the way we talked about elder abuse. We went from talking about elder abuse as being an issue about vulnerable people and protective services to really turning it around and looking at it as a right. The Elder Justice Act says very explicitly that freedom from elder abuse is a right that people have. And we know that elder justice, we know that as we age, defending our rights, those rights to due process system, all of those rights become harder to defend. Some of the barriers that we face are ageism. For some people, it's cognitive decline. Clearly the impact of racism and ableism and sexism and all the other isms, those continue into advanced age, and in some respect they intensify or they accumulate. And in addition to those rights that all of us are entitled to, those basic constitutional rights, some people have special rights that also become more difficult to exercise as we get older. One that we deal with a lot at CEJC is the rights of crime victims. Under our state constitution, crime victims have a right to restitution from their offenders and compensation for crime-related expenses, for services to keep them safe, like shelters. And a lot of older victims are denied those rights. And we've been working very closely with Cal OES, which has done a tremendous job stepping up and trying to help fill those gaps. So we're really pleased to see them represented in this group. Older consumers, including consumers of long-term care, have the right to consumer protections, including things like regulations and minimum standards of care, and recourse when those standards and those regulations aren't enforced. And clearly that hasn't happened all the time, particularly with nursing homes. We heard somebody mentioned earlier, financial services also, those are consumer issues, and we need to be thinking of those in terms of consumer rights. Incarcerated people lose a lot of rights, but there are rights that they retain, including the right to basic health care and the right to request compassionate release if they become very ill or are near death. And that's a right that many older inmates were denied, particularly during the pandemic. Older people with disabilities and chronic conditions have the right to reasonable accommodation in their communities. That's under the Americans with Disabilities Act. They have a right to the least restrictive alternatives under the Olmsted Supreme Court decision. Some elders have additional rights as landlords or as tenants or as patients. And I think a lot of older people just aren't aware of their rights. And a lot of us who are advocates aren't aware of all the rights that older people have and their families and their public. So I think we really need to be educating people about what people's rights are. Obviously, elder justice is about preventing elder abuse. That includes elder abuse in its very many manifestations: financial abuse, domestic violence, undue influence, the abuse of power, where more powerful people take advantage of those who are less powerful. And I think we're really starting to recognize how important prevention is. We know that trying to remedy abuse after the fact can be very, very difficult. And I think that's something that we're really pleased that we've been able to work with the County Welfare Directors Association, with Diana, and our other partners to try to increase APS services so that workers can have more time, can do more prevention work, and work with younger clients so that we can get to issues earlier on. You know, we also at CEJC address elder justice at the community level. And at the community level, it's really a matter of fairness. That's equity within communities and equity between communities, which we've already talked a little bit about today. You know, within communities, that means fair access to all of those protective services like adult protective services, ombudsman, legal assistance, police protection, and the myriad services that are needed to enhance people's independence, their home and community-based services. And access isn't just about open doors. It's workers who reflect the people that they serve, who understand the lived experiences of the people that they serve, and who really make an effort to go out into communities to build the trust that's needed between communities and the formal system. Elder justice is also equity between communities. Recently, some of us had a meeting with adult protective service workers in rural communities that are really resource starved. And we see that as an equity issue. And so we need to find ways to measure some of those inequities between counties and to address them. You know, at the systems level, another level that we address elder justice at, it's really about making sure that our laws and our policies, including our reporting laws, our mandatory reporting laws, don't infringe on people's autonomy or their freedom unnecessarily. This is what differentiates us from adult protective services and child protective services, is that we need to make those distinctions about when we have an obligation to step in and when we have a responsibility to step out. I think that's really important. I agree with what somebody said earlier, that elder justice really requires an informed public. We really need to get the message out there. And I think one of the most important messages is that these are rights that people have, making sure that people understand that being safe is a right, that consumer rights are something that we all possess. You know, there's a lot of talking out there now about reframing issues. And I think it's important that that we embrace that language of elder rights and elder justice. You know, it's a language that's powerful and that people understand. So I think it's clear how a lot of the goals that we have really fit in with other goals in the master plan and the other entities that are working in the master plan, including the groups that are looking at diversity, the groups that are looking at caregiving. So as we revised our blueprint, we have members of our steering committee and others who are going through the blueprint. We have sections that are looking at our mandatory reporting laws, at our justice systems, financial abuse, victim services, and many more. So we're in the process right now of going through each of those, laying out some of the background, looking at where our accomplishments have been, looking at some of the trends and making additional recommendations. And I'm hoping that we can come to members of this group to get your input. And also we'd welcome the opportunity to share what we're finding with you, whether that's preparing background materials for some of the meetings or just keeping you informed about our work. We'd really be happy to do that. In the as part of the new blueprint, we're also looking at a few additional issues, some of the areas that we'll be taking a closer look at. Clearly, and this has been said earlier today, COVID has really highlighted some problems that have really been long-standing, and it's just really brought them to life and put them in sharper relief. And that's particularly true in the case of nursing homes, which a lot of people have called kind of the epicenter of the pandemic. Many of the nursing homes that were really hardest hit by COVID were ones that had histories of neglect and citations. Many had disproportionately high number of BIPOC residents and workers. That's Black, Indigenous, people of color. And it really emphasized, the pandemic really emphasized how critical the welfare of the long-term care workforce is in keeping those that they serve safe. You know, the murder of George Floyd and calls for reimagining policing, I think really compel us to take a closer look at the role of law enforcement in elder abuse. Recognize that older people have vastly different experiences in relation to law enforcement. And where tensions and distrust exist, I think we really need to look at those head on. You know, some of the most passionate champions for elder justice that I've worked with over the years have come from law enforcement. And I think for many years, our multidisciplinary teams have provided forums for teaching law enforcement about older people and about aging services. And conversely, they've taught us about how they operate. And I think that that can be a real model for the kind of community policing that's being talked a lot about today. And I think we need to be proud of that and elevate it. But we also need to recognize that we need alternatives. You know, authority and punishment alone just don't work. And it's not what a lot of victims want. And that's one of the reasons that we at CEJC have been exploring restorative justice approaches to elder abuse as a complement. Just recently, we launched a series of webinars that's really taking a look at how we can use restorative approaches to support victims, their families, their communities, to help them strengthen relationships, resolve conflicts, and to try to repair harm while also ensuring accountability. We're also really focusing on the rights of people with cognitive impairments, and particularly those who need help with decision-making. It sounds like there's a lot of interest in this group about that as well. And this is an area where I think prevention really is key. You know, COVID showed us how quickly we can lose the ability to have control over our own lives and our own care. So we've really been making a push for trying to educate people about advanced directives. That's something that we'll be looking at in the blueprint. You know, Britney Spears has really brought conservatorship into the public spotlight. And I think we'll probably really never know the facts of that case, and we probably shouldn't. It's really none of our business, but it has amplified calls for reform, and that is our business. So I think those of us who have worked with the system, who are familiar with the system, who know both its strengths and its weaknesses and its challenges, I think we really need to be at the table. We need to be making part of that. We need to be part of that discussion. And here too, I think we need to apply an equity lens. You know, we can't just be focusing on wealthy celebrities. There are a lot of people out there, many people in California who have cognitive impairments and don't have trustworthy people that can help them make decisions or to make decisions for them if need be. You know, we like to say in elder abuse that it's easier to rob someone using a power of attorney than a gun. And chances are, their chances of getting caught are pretty slim. We're seeing an enormous amount of abuse using powers of attorneys, trusts, deed transfers, not to mention fraudulent marriages. And undoing abuse often requires getting court authority to overturn those kinds of legal devices that have been used to rob from people. It's really the only way of getting control out of the hands of some people into the hands of trustworthy people. So we know that that oftentimes conservatorship is really a blunt force instrument, where other instruments that are more refined can do a better job. But the problem is that we lack less restrictive alternatives. And that's why we at CEJC for many years have been calling for a working group that would explore some of the problems with conservatorship and really explore less restrictive alternatives. It might be that that's something that this group might want to take a look at. I think we also, we need to make sure that everyone who needs help with decisions has access to that kind of help, which is why it's so important, and I know it's been said already today, that we have adequate resources for public guardians and court investigators and legal assistance programs, ombudsman programs, APS programs, and courts. All of those are really imperative to make sure that people that need help with decision-making have that help. And we're so pleased that CDA is starting the Office of the Long-Term Care Patient Representative. That's just wonderful. And that you're also talking about a liaison with the public guardians and the public conservators. These are major steps in the right direction, and we're just so pleased to see that happening. So the last thing I wanted to tell you about was a new program that we've just launched. It's called the A-Team, and we hope that that also can be a resource to this group. As a lot of you know, as all of you I know, I'm sure, elder abuse is really by nature a multidisciplinary field. And that's why we have multidisciplinary teams around the state that come together to come up with multidisciplinary solutions to elder abuse cases. But having worked on coordinated a team for many years, I can tell you that oftentimes MDTs get stuck when it comes to systems issues, or they come up against barriers that really could only be addressed through advocacy, through systems change. And so what we're creating is a state level team that will receive referrals from local multidisciplinary teams when they run into advocacy issues, that we can help them with that. So we're bringing together a group of real problem solvers, people who have experience as policy analysts, content experts. We're working with a law clinic at the McGeorge Law School. And so the idea is for us to be able to vet problems and to try to research solutions. So whether it's getting banks to cooperate with in investigations, and I know some members in this group are working on that already, Andrea, or getting answers to issues that they're having around confidentiality. I'm really delighted that Carol Sewell has just joined our team from the California Commission on Aging. One of the things that she's doing right now is trying to pull together an inventory of multidisciplinary teams. And Carol, if you're on, if you could maybe put your email in the chat so that people who are aware of multidisciplinary teams around the state or would like to find out how they can get involved can contact you. So we're hoping that once we get started, that if we come up with recommendations that require action from the state agencies or at the state level, that we can bring them to this group. And again, we'd also be happy to be a resource for this group if issues come up that require the review by a group of people that have experts in the field. We'd be happy to do that. So I will just end by saying how really pleased we are to be part of this group and look forward to working with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And it looks like we have maybe a question from Howard, who's had his hand up for a while, and some comments in the chat. Carla in the chat is kind of making that connection between the master plan for aging and elevating that cognitive impairment is often kind of lost or missed in the primary care setting, and that's an important issue as well. So Howard, let's hear from you. Howard, it looks like you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Howard Mcbroom, and I am an advocate for Easter shows. I work for them, and my job as an advocate is to, I feel, to teach people about their rights, to tell them, what rights they have and how they can stand up for those rights and how to speak up for themselves. And I also feel that we need to focus on person-centered planning when we deal with the individual. We need to teach people the rights, and we need to give them the skill to know how to exercise those rights, because it doesn't do much good to teach them about the right if they don't know how to use them. So we need to teach them that. I also feel very strongly that we need to teach more skills to the people who work with, the elderly, people who are maybe cognitively impaired or have trouble understanding, people who don't have much power, who are helpless. And we need to teach people how to deal with them other than by force or, taking over control of their lives. The whole point of empowerment and advocacy is to give power to people, not take it away from them. We need to give power to people, not take it away from them. And I feel that teaching advocacy and skill to people who work with them would be a great way of ending a lot of elderly abuse. A lot of abuse, I feel, takes place because people don't know what else they can do. If they knew there were alternatives, they would probably take them. So that's what I as an advocate feel needs to be done. And finally, I want to say that I am very, very concerned about the tremendous level of violence in our society on all levels, against the elderly and against everyone else. We absolutely have to do something to stop violence in our society. And I have written a website about that at howardmcbroom.com. And that's all I had to say. And I am very thankful to be here on the council. And I look forward to working with all of you. And there's a lot of work to be done.
Well, I certainly absolutely agree with you on that's the message that we need to get out to the public, that that these are rights that people have. And the first step really is to educate ourselves about the rights that people have. I continually learn about what the state constitution has to say and what other rights older people have. So definitely it's an education process. And I think, as a way of, there's a lot of talk about reframing how we talk about aging and elder abuse. And I think that's really an important way to talk about it. And it's an empowering way to talk about it.
Thank you, Howard. And thank you, Lisa. Not reframing, framing. You did a beautiful job of framing a number of issues. And the state of California owes the Elder Justice Coalition a debt of gratitude for your work over many years, and your original blueprint, the one that's being updated now, and our thanks to the foundations that have supported your work and allowed.
Definitely put a plug in for Archstone. I need to do that.
Please do.
They've been tremendous advocates.
And I appreciate too that you reminded us all that Kim McCoy-Wade started much of this work when she was the director of the California Department of Aging. And we're so fortunate now to have her in her role as the senior advisor to Governor Newsom on aging, disability, and Alzheimer's. So as the issues of cognitive impairment come up today, she's in a fantastic position to continue this work from the governor's office. Do we have any other comments, questions, or feedback on Lisa's presentation? Anybody? Blanca, it looks like Blanca Castro has something. Yes.
Thank you. Oh, Lisa, it's just a pleasure to hear you and really honored to have you here on this presentation. I didn't hear, and I just wanted your thoughts on, with regard to Facebook and some of the social media platforms, they are ripe for abuse and exploitation for people who are feeling isolated and lonely. And unfortunately, I know of people who've been victims, and they just have no recourse once their finances have been completely taken away, and of course, not to mention the emotional abuse. So where do you see that? And then the other question I had, just your thoughts on about making this more of a civil rights issue, and bringing other groups like Lambda and others that have done work within this and with other communities. So that's 2 questions. Sorry.
Well, starting with the financial abuse, man, it is tough to stay abreast of what's happening on in the financial abuse arena. And I know that a lot of people, troll for victims using social media. It's something, that I'd actually like to redirect the question to our representatives from the Office of Consumer Fraud and Elder Abuse. I'm sure they probably are working on those issues. As far as the other question, I definitely see ourselves as being aligned with other human rights groups. I think elder abuse and elder justice are human rights issues, and I think that I think we have a lot to bring to that network. We have our understanding of ageism is informed by the work that other human rights organizations have led us into.
Michael, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yes, sorry, I have technical issues. Good afternoon, everybody, and I want to thank you for this opportunity. I really look forward to the very fruitful discussions I think we're going to have. I did want to echo what Lisa had just said too about the integration of systems. We've been too compartmentalized and working on our individual silos for way too long. I think in order really to be successful is we need to move past this concept of I can't talk to you, it's confidential. From a perspective of this is a multidisciplinary, we're holding a multidisciplinary team, we're doing a case consultation with a colleague or another discipline because working in the field for 25 years and starting out child welfare, that was the mantra that immediately came up as, oh, we can't talk about it, that's confidential. And the reality is there are limitations to confidentiality, which allows for a lot of flexibility in the professional world. I would really like to see us, as part of this, is looking at how can we maybe broaden that to allow for a more freer exchange of information. As a representative for Adult Protective Services, oftentimes challenges we run into is being able to get the information that we need from medical providers, financial institutions, in order to really determine if a crime was committed or not, whether it was an intentional act or just a minor one-time offense versus it being an ongoing or chronic issue. I really, we have a multidisciplinary team here in Fresno. We've been able to grow over the last few years. I would really be interested in Lisa or anybody else who has a multidisciplinary team or looking at them to share my experiences or learn from you. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
And we already have been hearing about, I know from my own experiences that MDTs around the state are struggling with issues around confidentiality. And I think that's an issue that would very much be something that this group could take a look at. I'm looking at different people to bounce questions back to, and I think maybe this is one that Jeremy and I could have some discussions about. Do we need policy around confidentiality or just interpretations or clarifications of existing policy around confidentiality? So those are the kinds of things that, we know communities around the state are struggling with, and, rather than having everyone struggle alone, I think this group could be a real forum for looking at those issues and seeing if there's direction that we can provide.
Great. Carla.
Yeah, just to follow on that thread of confidentiality, I'd love to spend more time talking that. I think as the referring provider, we don't always know what's happened, and therefore, I've worked in a practice that sees homebound seniors, and sometimes we don't know, has there been any resolution? Is it safe for my team to go out? Are there things that I need to still look out for? And I think if we look at a global perspective on health, the more we continue to keep our social systems and siloed from our medical systems, that's not person-centered care. I absolutely recognize the right to privacy, but I wonder if we're doing a disservice to ourselves and to all of us. I look forward to really having this discussion from a policy perspective.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. At this point, I'm going to invite Vivian. We're gonna, this agenda was posted to the public and it showed that we are taking our break at 2:40. So Vivian, would you like to present now up until 2:40? Does that work for you?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, great.
Thank you. And I just want to make a little correction. I am not a Peter Harbridge Fellow, but we do have a Peter Harbridge Fellow at Justice and Aging. So my name is Vivian Mbaku. I'm a senior staff attorney with Justice and Aging, headquartered out of our Los Angeles office. And Justice and Aging is a national nonprofit, but we do a lot of California-based advocacy, and we have offices in Los Angeles and in Oakland. So I just wanted to thank everybody for allowing me to provide some comments that can, oh, is it hard? Is it hard for people to hear me? 1 second. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to thank everyone for allowing me to provide some comments that can hopefully frame the work of this council and our approach to that work. So the stated goal of the council is to increase coordination and develop recommendations to prevent and address the abuse, neglect, exploitation, and fraud perpetrated against older adults and adults with disabilities. And in achieving our goal of, And in achieving our goal of increasing coordination and developing recommendations, I think it's important to consider our grounding principles in which we approach any of this work. So for our work to be most impactful, it's imperative that we commit ourselves to challenging assumptions about older and disabled adults and embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion as guiding forces within our work. But many people may ask, why would we even do that? And while I'm sure everyone on this council understands the importance of equity and its intersections with the aging and disabled populations, our council is also tasked with providing insight to those that are not deeply entrenched in aging and disability circles. So despite the fact that our older adult and disabled populations are incredibly diverse, just like the rest of our state, many outside of our normal spheres of influence still think of an older or disabled person in a very specific way. Most commonly, it's a white middle-class person, a person who has significant family and community support, access to all of the supports and services necessary to allow them to live comfortably in their communities, a person who never worries about feeding or housing themselves, a person who's capable of communicating their needs to others and is heard. This characterization erases the complexity of these populations and in turn could lead to programs and policies that, while intended to uplift, may end up underserving entire swaths of the older and disabled adult population. Nationally, older adults of color make up a rapidly growing percentage of the older adult population. And by 2060, we expect the populations of Black older adults, Latino older adults, Asian older adults to more than double and in some cases quadruple by 2060. In 1990, ethnic minorities made up about 13% of the older adult population, but by 2050, they will make up 36%. And our population of LGBTQ older adults is also increasing and expecting to total close to 3 million by 2030. Among the disabled adult population, we see distinct differences based on race, with CDC data showing that 1 in 4 Black adults have a disability compared to 1 in 5 white adults and 1 in 10 Asian adults. And with the increasing diversity of these communities, research regarding their views of our social services system raised some concerns. From research by the National Center on Elder Abuse, we know that Black, Latino, and LGBTQ older adults are more likely to not seek out services and supports for abuse and exploitation for fear of negative interactions with social service agencies and the police. In addition, Black older adults are not likely to seek help for abuse because of the fear of racial discrimination. These responses are based on decades of lived experiences and discrimination, and the onus is on the system to win back the trust of these communities. We should be alarmed that anyone facing abuse and exploitation would consider not accessing services and supports because the system has so harmed them and their communities in the past that they no longer trust they will be served properly. By centering our responses and recommendations at every level in equity, we ensure that our council's work impacts not just those who fit a preconceived notion of an older or disabled adult. It will ensure that we have the impact we intend to, that our efforts are focused and not haphazard, and will set an example not just within California, but the rest of the country. But you may wonder, how do we even achieve this goal? How do we center diversity, equity, and inclusion? How can we challenge those assumptions, knowing that there is so much at risk by falling back on the old way of doing things? Fortunately, we are tackling these issues today. So the first thing that we can do is ensure that we are centering equity and considering all older and disabled adults by making sure that we actually hear directly from these groups. The fact that this council is composed of not just government representatives, but also those working in communities to represent older and disabled adults highlights how the state of California is prioritizing collaboration and recognizing the role that community-based organizations and advocates play in improving the lives of older and disabled adults. This type of public-private collaboration allows better connection to communities and those who are impacted by policies. And while it may seem simple, this is not the norm, and the structure of this council is admirable. But we can do more. We should strive to receive input from older and disabled adults themselves, especially people of color from these groups. We should hear their experiences and the experiences of their family members, caregivers, and community members. These testimonies will ground our work in the actual experiences of Californians and provide much needed insight into how any recommendations might play out in real time. Second, we should prioritize data collection and research. In the policy world, data often dictates who gets resources and whose problems receive solutions. Unfortunately, despite a large portion of older adults belonging to marginalized groups, research regarding these groups lags behind, specifically research regarding their experiences of abuse and exploitation. The state has already taken up this baton with the data dashboard, but there is still more work to do. Research on abuse and exploitation of marginalized groups highlights that what abuse is changes depending on the cultural context. For example, an outsider might see a family pooling financial resources, including an older adult's retirement benefits, as financial exploitation, while the older adult may feel that this is a part of their culture and identity to share their resources with their loved ones. Without further research and data collection, we risk losing the context of the cultural experiences of many older and disabled adults. We are therefore unable to provide a culturally appropriate response. Finally, it's really important that we ask hard questions, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and confront our own biases. To properly represent the great diversity of this state, we need to confront our own biases, specifically implicit biases, and be comfortable with challenging them. Confronting biases requires us to question how every policy will impact all groups, not just the majority. To consider if there will be unintended impacts that will need to be mitigated, and consider historical discrimination and how it has impacted existing policies and how it might impact new policies. This council has an incredible opportunity to be a force in improving the lives of older and disabled Californians, and I believe that with equity at our core, we can achieve this goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Thank you. Before we take our break, would anybody like to add to or comment on Vivian's remarks? No, everyone wants a break. Friday afternoon, 3-hour meeting in the afternoon. All right, so we will take a break now from 2:40 to 2:50. Thank you very much to Vivian and Lisa for presenting. Kim and Jeremy, we appreciated your remarks. And when we return, we'll hear from Amanda Lawrence about ways to organize this work and get things done. So we'll see you back here at 2:50. Thanks so much. Okay, if you're in the kitchen making a snack or a cup of coffee, we're going to start returning to the meeting. Bringing everybody up, Lisa got a beverage. And welcome back to our public members too, who are listening in. We are resuming the meeting. And we'll give people a minute here. I see, thank you for turning your videos back on, so I know you're with us again. This is the phase where we figuratively roll up our sleeves and really lean into the council to co-create the work ahead. So we're going to be talking now. There's no one better at organizing stakeholder work than Amanda Lawrence, who is the project director for the Master Plan for Aging, and who has been lead for the Stakeholder Advisory Group, for the LTSS Subcommittee, for the Equity Work Group, for the Research Group. So we've asked Amanda to get the conversation started about how we might approach this work and what the next best steps are for all of you as committee members, so that it feels productive and purposeful and works with your bandwidth that you have. So Amanda, take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I am so excited to be able to talk with you about the ways that this committee or council can advance its work. Very excited about a whole brand new effort to address elder and disability justice. And I know that folks here, you're not here to meet for the purpose to meet, but you're here to advance an elder and disability justice agenda. And I just know that this body of advocates and service providers and legal professionals and caregivers and consumers, you're the type of people who want to roll up your sleeves and dig in and drive systems level change. So I want to take some time to talk about how we can approach advancing this work that happens between the meetings. And so I'll talk a little bit about the potential for developing a couple of work groups. Earlier, Kim and Jeremy, they described the benefit of sort of taking an inventory of all the elder and disability justice prevention, response, and prosecution efforts across the state, and to map those out so that we can really identify the gaps and to help determine those areas where cross-sector alignment and some targeted attention could really improve the prevention and response efforts at that broader systems level. But we also want to be sure that we look at that map or that inventory or landscape from the perspective of how things should work for older adults and adults with disabilities. We want to ensure that that landscape really is centered around providers and consumers. And it should clearly articulate that abuse and neglect applies across the whole continuum of healthcare, of long-term support services, and really daily life, and highlight that intersection of elder and disability justice throughout the continuum. I think that this effort to develop this sort of landscape would dovetail nicely with what was the second most prioritized item in the stakeholder member survey, which was improved data collection. I think we all are collecting a lot of data, and we could probably benefit from sharing it. And we can probably work together to identify how we can improve how we collect data, how we make it more equitable, how we're identifying the reality of what is going on across the state for folks who are encountering abuse, fraud, and neglect. And several people have mentioned silos today. And this could be one tool we could use to help guide us in breaking down those silos. So that's one option I'd love to talk with everyone about and sort of get your take on if you feel this would be a valuable tool, how we could go about organizing ourselves to create this tool, who could be the lead or leaders in this effort. Clearly, this has to be a stakeholder and state member effort for this particular work group, because again, the data and the program and the processing, we all want to be able to get together and really elucidate a lot of what the programs, et cetera, that are happening at the state level that can often be confusing and just hard to navigate for folks. Second thing I'd like to talk about with everyone is the potential to create other work groups that will advance work between meetings. And I mean, I know this is our first meeting. We're just getting to know each other. There's a lot to process, and this is a highly complex issue that we're trying to address. The number one most identified role of the Elder and Disability Justice Council by those who filled out the survey that was sent out to stakeholders before this meeting, said that they wanted the role to provide formal recommendations, policy recommendations to the state related to elder and disability justice. So I want to think about, do we want to create work groups that do develop these recommendations, but how do you even organize those recommendations? Is it by topic? Is it by person's experience, different processes? So that's one option. And of course, love to hear from everyone. Also wanted to emphasize that, this is January. We're just starting, it's our first meeting. Maybe think about what do we want to accomplish by December of 2022? Do we want to have products? Do we want to, and how do we really work well together to achieve those products? I'm going to open it up to folks, and I'd love to hear not just your ideas about the sorts of committees or topics you'd like to address, but also want to hear if this process has happened. You've seen this process work really well in other committees. Have you seen a very action-oriented agenda that's really worked for you and you've seen to create change? So I am going to open it up. Folks can just raise their hands and share their thoughts about what we can do together. And Astrid.
Sorry, it took a second to get off mute, and I apologize. I'm under the weather, but I think one of the actionable items we could probably move on as a group, or maybe a work group could move forward with, and I apologize, Astrid Zuniga, United Domestic Workers. I'm also a home care provider for my adult son, who's Manny. He's autistic, and so that's part of the reason why I'm here. But I think we could, one of the actionable items where I was going with this was that we could ask the Attorney General Bonta to have the DOJ review and comment some of the 12 recommendations that were sent in the letter that was sent out in the agenda and attached to the agenda. I apologize if it's hard to hear. I don't have a voice. And the letter that was sent out in December of 2019 asking the Attorney General to have the Department of Justice review and comment on those 12 recommendations. We haven't heard anything over the last couple of years, and to have something from this committee or this council asking the AG and the DOJ what their recommendations and commenting on those our recommendations from that letter, I think would be an awesome opportunity for us to get involved in or move forward with.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And we will post those recommendations on the Cal HHS Elder Justice page so that the public can see those as well. Any feedback on the concept of building out the California landscape? Does that sound like it would be a beneficial action or project to take on? Lisa, did you just nod your head?
I did nod my head, and I also was going to raise my hand anyway. Yeah, I think, on the early in this meeting, you showed slides from the different departments of their work in elder justice. And I'm wondering if we can all get copies of that, because things change all the time, and I'm not aware, for example, of what the AG's office has been doing recently on elder abuse. It would help us to see, if there have been changes. It would also help us with our blueprint. But one of the things that we're talking about doing just soon that we're not aware of, for example, all of the different services that legal assistance programs are doing in elder abuse, and we're planning to possibly talk to LACS, the Legal Assistance, Legal Aid Association of California, to do some kind of a survey of what they're doing in elder abuse. And so that's something, if we go ahead with that, we'd be happy to participate in that way. I'd also be interested in knowing what area agencies are doing on elder abuse. I don't know if that's something that anyone wants to tackle.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up. We have taken note that the legal assistance programs, would be great to map those out as well. As Jeremy said, we just have those state programs, and I do want to share those slides with this group, but you said things change fast. Things have already changed since we made the slides, I think like 4 months ago. So I will need to get the most current information, and we also took that information and put it in a spreadsheet, which I think would be something that if this committee or subcommittee forms, they could have those materials and start to build off of those. And yes, love your suggestion to get the AAAs, get information on what they are doing. Let's see here. Marty, is your hand up? Go ahead.
Oh, I think Tony's hand was up for mine. And
All right, it was Ellen, then Marty, then Jamie, then.
Okay, I'm gonna put Maria in charge of.
And Vivian's got her hand up too.
Oh, Maria.
I mean, I'll go. I just don't like shoving myself in front of Tony Anderson. So,
Oh my goodness.
Marty Yamamoto, can you, Amanda, you're just amazing because about putting things together like this, in the previous work for the master plan, as Susan was saying. So, but can you explain again, just on the landscape, is this looking at the different systems, the silos, and
Yeah.
not just seeing where we are, but I mean, where we want to go, and because I think one of the things is it's going to be important for all of us. We come from different experiences, and so when certain terms are used, like elder abuse, I think of older Californian seniors, but I also think of when my sister was still alive, and she was an older Californian too, but she had developmental disabilities, and I don't know if everyone stops and thinks, oh, it could be a person with developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities. When we talk about, dependent adults or people who have diminished capacity or whatever, they might think of a person with Alzheimer's. And I think we're all going to have to work together to broaden, these definitions, getting back to the person-centered and connect the landscape to, the individuals that Tony serves in his regional center and the people that I work with. And that's not easy to do because we've had all this experience. And secondly, I think the expectation about next steps is we have to we're overwhelmed by everything that's happened in the last couple of years, because all the things that we worked on, we didn't think it was going to happen, right, on the master plan this fast, and it happened. And so I think the other thing is whatever we can do that is realistic, that can get us, to the next step. And Amanda, you're really great at keeping us focused too. So, so I'll help with anything regarding the landscape and breaking down the silos.
That's so great. Thank you. And I think you bring up an excellent point about how the landscape should really be about how we want the system to look. What is the goal? Not just what is existing and what's not working, but driving towards the future and that person-centered focus. And also, I appreciate your comments about creating a shared language, because that does come up a lot. It's come up in surveys and in applications from folks who join this council, that also could behoove the work of this body. I'm going to let Maria call on the next person.
Thanks, Amanda. We're going to circle back to Ellen because I think she was first in line. So go ahead, Ellen.
I think Tony was before me.
Go, Tony.
There's such generous people on this committee. I'm so happy to be on this group. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Marty. And also, I want to second what Astra said too. In reading the materials that you gave us, that was one of my thoughts as well, was what is the AG's response? And then also all these laws that seem to be worked on and put in place over the years to address, move the needle on this issue it just, and it seems like they're not being done, or there's some concern about them. And I just kept thinking, well, what all has been done if we just keep making different laws, or different people keep working on making different laws and nothing's changing? What is that, and why is that happening? Or maybe an inventory of what those are. That was sort of what was standing out for me in reading through all those. It took me a couple of shots at it, because I had to, I mean, these were really well written. Both of these letters were really well done. So I that's what I was left with that. And I'm very excited to begin to look at all of that and learn more about what everybody else is doing in this space.
Great. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, Ellen. We'll do Ellen, then Vivian, and Janie.
Thank you. Yes. You know, I'm trying to think of some quick wins, and so much work has been done, and I look forward to seeing the update that you were talking about, Lisa, looking back at the various recommendations and the current status. I think that would be really helpful to review. But I go back to another master plan initiative, California for All Ages, and trying to think of the prevention focused work we can do. Advanced directives was mentioned, you know, getting the word out, outreach, education at the local level, statewide level, and talk about what people of all ages can do, because anybody can think about advanced directives. It's not just a senior, that's part of life. I was inspired by a community in Wisconsin years ago that everybody in their community went forward and got an advanced directive. And they talked about concrete savings in hospitalizations and other issues. But it just really inspired me. And I thought, when people pull together for a common goal. So anyway, I think that could be a quick win in terms of educating about something that almost everybody can relate to.
Hey, quick wins, advanced directives. Next person, Maria.
Vivian.
Thanks. I wanted to just voice my support for the gap analysis. I think that that in conjunction with just, I mean, I guess it would be a part of it, a landscaping of the entire state, so that we can actually have an understanding of what services are available, what services aren't available, and really actually honing in at every level, like local, county, and statewide, so that we can see where we actually are. I worry about us working on things that maybe don't need to be worked on immediately, duplicating energies and work in places that we don't need to. So really understanding where we actually are right now, I think, is really important. And then also kind of layered on top of that, I think it would be useful for us to create some kind of equity framework for any of the work that we're doing. I think we have to think about equity at every, like in the beginning. I think so often people think about equity when everything's already done. And then you're basically working backwards and having to redo things to fix problems that you've created. And so we really need to think about, how do we create an equity framework, questions that we ask ourselves about everything that we're doing, to make sure we're actually not only trying to help as many people as possible, but also considering, like, are we going to create a problem for a group? Or is there a group that we are completely forgetting about? We're not reaching out to certain groups when they should be, because this is going to impact them. Like, really good example, tribal communities, often forgotten. People just don't even think about how could a policy be implemented there? Are we looking for funding for them? So maybe creating some kind of framework so that we can always go back to that when we're looking at any issue, and know that at least from the beginning, we've really put equity up front.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you, Vivian. And then let's move to Janie.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Janie Whiteford, and I'm the president of Sika, California In-Home Support Services Consumer Alliance. And I'm looking at our population. I mean, we have almost over 600,000 IHSS consumers here in the state. And at the state IHSS, they have a fraud unit. And I think it's really a good opportunity for us to get statistics as to what they're finding with our IHSS population, because this is what they're supposed to be doing. My big question is, are they really doing it? And I think this comes to the whole education thing, because I know I've pushed for years for consumer education and then also social worker education, and that this might be a really good opportunity to kind of look at what we want to do in a smaller arena and seeing if it flies. Because it's, you know, if it would work here, it'll work everywhere as we go down with recommendations.
Thank you, Janie. And as we transition, I just want to point to the chat that there's conversation about looking at other states and the Weinberg Center in New York in particular as a model. So Keely Saran.
Hi. I'm just thinking that it is so broad, everything that we want to do. And I think it would be of value of thinking what sort of area we want to enhance first. Is it prevention? Is it intervention, prosecution, or what? Because elder justice is just so broad. What would bring the most value to our community first? So I think whatever set of topics that we choose, what is the angle? Is it remediation? Is it prevention, intervention? So I just wanted to make that comment.
Very much. And Blanca, it looks like you're next.
Thank you. On that note, I would offer that looking at what the data shows us right now and who has what, and I could share from the perspective of the National Ombudsman reporting system. We have a system that looks at, or we collect all the complaints, we code them on what the nature of those complaints are. And I can tell you from the perspective of the data from just last year, there was a 37% increase in the number of cases involving abuse, neglect, and exploitation, as well as a really high number of cases around care. And with care, it's, you know, you go into everything from not getting bathed to waiting for somebody to come in and, you know, give you your medication or change you or whatever the case may be. But all this to say is I would offer from the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Office that to whatever extent we can share that information with this council, I think it would be really helpful. And to, is it Aquiles? Your point that we also have, and I'm going to mess up the name, but it's the health data that we collect, and we've been trying to figure out, you know, when people access certain services, but is that also a place where we can look at starting to collect more data where it may include potential suspected abuse, because these are things that there's an encounter with care, and it could very well be that we have a way to organize the state data so that we're really informing where who's really at risk, what age group, where, you know, the disabilities, and just trying to put our arms around this so that it's not so overwhelming, and that we're all over the place. But I do agree it's a very large endeavor, but I think data needs to be one of the pieces that we can look at first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you, Blanca. Okay, Jason Black.
Hello, my name is Jason Black. I'm the executive director at Atascadero State Hospital. I'm just really trying to, this is my first meeting, and I'm really trying to figure out how to fit into the group. We here have over 1,000 patients. which we consider dependent adults. And we have a system here where in a full police officer department where we look at all police matters into patient abuse and neglect. So pretty covered. A couple things that I want to mention that other people have mentioned is the idea of siloed systems or agencies. It seems like, at least at a state hospital level, we're siloed in a way that we have different departments that we just kind of work with. And that's why I'm kind of stepping up and talking, is that it's kind of intimidating to be in this group to where it's mostly folks that are kind of in this field. If you're talking about mental illness, I can definitely relate and contribute a lot more, but so still trying to figure that piece out. So the siloed aspect is that, for instance, here at the state hospital level, is we have a lot of communication with our county jails, as well as with CDCR, which is corrections. DRC does have oversight into patients' rights aspects here, so we do have that communication with them. It's not so much done as an educational piece, but it's more done on a surveying type of piece. So taking a look at that, I think would be helpful. Education came up related to, I think someone mentioned education specifically on a social work end. But social work end, I would add to that. I would add police, and I would also add attorneys. Here in the system that I work in, I used to be a social worker, a clinical social worker on the floor before I moved up into administration. And I remember cases to where elder people get involved in the criminal justice system, some with dementia, that are sent to us under incompetence to stand trial, and they get stuck in the system. And then for our social workers to discharge them out to the community, there's really a lack of resources. And then we don't have a lot of jurisdiction over how to set them up, especially if they go under parole. We kind of lose contact with that to offer any type of support systems out there. So I just wanted to mention those two things. And again, it's the siloed aspect, knowing the agencies that are kind of involved and who we kind of talk to. Definitions too, I kind of wrote down in the sense of just understanding that, as we talk about defining different things. Like I mentioned with a dependent adult, we don't often use elder adult because everyone's captured under a dependent adult here at this hospital. So I think that's it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Is there anybody else? Yes, Lisa. Sorry, Amanda.
No, go ahead. Go, Lisa, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to the question or the comments, several of them about collecting data, and that's something we've been toying around with and thinking about. How you track disparities, and one of the things that we've been looking at is like we've tried, thought about ways to look at the disparities between APS between counties, and it seems like to do that you have to understand what they're doing so that so that we can track if they're improving. And we don't have the same kinds of regulations and guidelines that we can kind of use to measure that they have, for example, in child protective services. And it's some of the ideas that we've talked about are, can we develop like a listing of here's what we would like to see adult protective service units doing, ask counties to chart them. This is what we're doing and this is what we're not doing. Of course, they don't, that's kind of threatening because it makes people feel like they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, but it would be a way of starting to show disparities between groups and maybe even provide data that they can use with their own, local government, which is where most of their money comes, a lot of their money comes from. That's one way, but looking between counties, disparities between counties, one way.
Thank you. Sherry, I saw you had your hand up for a second. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I was hoping the group would also focus on a wide age range of disabilities, cognitive disabilities, specifically the non-speaking community.
Okay.
Anyone else?
How about anyone from our state partnership side? Any thoughts on this, the landscape, creating a work group that really focuses on the landscape and gaps analysis and data sharing? Claire Ramsey.
Maria, I think one of the pieces that's really been resonating as I'm listening is how we are connected into our social services as well. I know that seems, given that I'm at CDSS, it makes a lot of sense, but you know, we both under our umbrella run the Home Safe program, which is working to connect APS and services around housing, but other social services as well. And obviously we're the state agency for the statewide APS. So just thinking about the ways that, you know, what people need could be pretty broad and diverse. And some of it might be immediate interventions to stop abuse, to make sure people are safe, but then what do people need to stay safe? And I think oftentimes that is connections into social services. And so as we're doing the landscape analysis, just keeping those things in mind as well, that like there's the immediate need and then there's the longer term need to preserve safety and to preserve stability for people. So just wanted to throw that into the mix. But I think, I do think the gap analysis and the embedding of equity is making a lot of sense as sort of early task to get us on the right road.
Linda, you've got your hand up as well.
Oh. Thank you so much. I'm Linda with the Victim Compensation Board, and I just wanted to say, so we've created an ad hoc only state agency council that actually had its first meeting this week, and Jeremy was a part of that, to look at all the state entities that are impacted by, that help victims in the state of California. And really, it was the first time that that group had ever gotten together to really talk about how we could coordinate our efforts better. So similar to what you're looking at here, you know, I think amongst ourselves on the state level, how can we work together to pool different resources and understand how they work? Ours is focused on victims of crime of all ages, but obviously the elderly are a significant portion of that as well. So we look forward to kind of continuing, for me, participating in this effort, and Jeremy participated in my effort, but I would also say to any of the other state partners who are on this, if you're interested and don't know if you had participation, please reach out to me. I'd like to talk to you about it because I think there's a lot of overlap. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Diana, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to build on what Claire had just referenced, as I agree in looking at that intersection of elder justice and the social services arena. Also am interested in the intersect with CalAIM and how there might be opportunities there to support elder justice work in partnerships with or as an extension of the CalAIM work that's ahead.
Thank you, Diane. Anybody else?
I see no hand.
I was just, Amanda, the data I was talking about was the CHIS, or the California Health
Interview survey.
Interview survey. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Blanca.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more comments, ideas, how we can organize ourselves? We're looking good. Okay. So one thing I think I'm hearing is that a work group that could really focus on that landscape and gap analysis would be of value to actually not just a great product we could create, but also inform future work of this group. And data would be included in that. And I'm wondering if that's something that this group thinks they could put together to present by the next meeting, and who would want to be involved in that work group. Perhaps another work group we could put together is one that's focused on that equity framework, and really how do we apply this equity framework to our council principles and the criteria for developing future products, projects, and our work here. Anyone, does did I feel like I captured it? Because there's so many topics everyone has brought up, and I think they're all so important and valuable. And I also think refocusing on those Attorney General recommendations could be something that a few members of this group could do. But as far as follow-up, I could email everyone on this council and outline some options, solicit names of who would like to get involved in these efforts. You know, we will have the state there to assist with the landscape effort. I think some of the other efforts that you're interested in should really be stakeholder led, because we're here to empower you so that you can make the best recommendations to us and you can really drive the work and improve the work that gets done at the state level. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Susan and see if she has any other observations about the next steps. Well, she's going to talk about next steps and any ideas she has for organizing this group.
Bravo, Amanda. Thank you. And before I leap into that, Howard, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to say that I would like to be on a work group that deal with advocacy and person-centered planning and teaching people about their rights. I feel that that is where I could use my strengths to best.
Thank you, Howard. So I thought, gosh, can Amanda look through the screen at my notes? Because I've been taking notes throughout, and what I heard from the group was, we've known each other now for almost 3 hours. So there's likely a need to do some foundational work, some baseline work. And that's exactly what I heard from the group, Amanda, that to really get clear on the landscape and the gap analysis, which is also would then become a common frame of reference for all of us. And then to Vivian's point about the equity frame, I also heard, I think it was Marty, about criteria, maybe what criteria we would apply to, maybe it was Marty, someone said, should we start with prevention? So there might be something with equity and some values or criteria around how we proceed with the work that would help us then determine what topics or themes to embark on and give a little bit of guidance. One of the, something I really like about bringing this group together is because we come from different, a variety of agencies and departments, we bring a wealth of visions and values and principles to this work. And it probably would be a good exercise to spend a little bit of time articulating a few for this group that are shared by everyone. So that's what I heard, Amanda. I wonder if there is a volunteer, and everybody is welcome to think on this, but I wonder on the landscape and gap analysis, if there is a member of the council who would be willing to take that first step and coordinate with us to get it off the ground. If we have a volunteer to lead that, and you can let us know after the meeting too, but if somebody is on the screen and thought, I've been waiting my whole life to lead the landscape work group and here's my shot, please raise your hand. All right, I'm not seeing a volunteer. And then on the second, or a nomination, Lisa Coleman has nominated Lisa to do that work. And I want to give so much credit to the agencies and departments that have already begun the work. So you will not be starting from scratch. There's already a framework that's underway. So Lisa, we won't put you on the spot. On that. And then for the other work group, and these might be as short as, between now and April, and then they don't meet again. So by committing to this, it doesn't mean you're leading this work group for years to come. I think this is the work that we need to launch the council. Is there a volunteer for the equity frame and the values or principles of the group? And again, and oh, Vivian, I was hoping you would do that. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you very much. So we've got one anchor.
And Lisa is
And
also-
Lisa, thank you. Thank you. All right. So in terms of the topics and the survey, you know, APS was clearly the front runner. Would the group be comfortable revisiting that at the April meeting and start with these two work groups that are fundamental to the work that follows? Or is there a strong, Scarlett, I see your hand is raised.
Sorry, I was looking for the other button. No, I didn't mean to raise my hand. Sorry.
Okay. If somebody feels strongly that we should create a third work group right out of the gate that focuses more on a topic or a recommendation, I heard Ellen talk about quick wins. If there's somebody who wants to make that suggestion, let us know. All right, so maybe in April, we could pick up with the topics once again, after we hear from these two work groups. And we did hear wanting to circle back around on the 2019 letter to the AG. So between meetings, we'll get status on that. And perhaps Jennifer or somebody else can report out to us in April. So at this point, we have two work groups. And are there other thoughts or considerations for the group before we open to public comment?
Susan, this is Marty. I put something in the chat just asking if Marty Yamamoto CD can, regarding the work groups, if members of the public can actively work as, you know, as participants in those work groups. I think we've done that in other stakeholder working, you know, situations at the work group level.
Yes, I think that's a great suggestion, Marty.
Thank you.
And so yes, members of the public and additional experts could be added to the work groups to round them out. Absolutely. Okay.
Sorry, I asked the same thing. Will we be assigned to a work group or be placed in one that's exactly the same thing? Sorry, will we be assigned or do we volunteer for one? It's clearly Friday at 3:30. So.
It would be great if everybody volunteered for one of the work groups, and we'll follow up with a roster and we'll work with the two, with Lisa and Vivian, who volunteered, about a process for those, the process they want to follow for those work groups, and get that out so that you can volunteer for one of the two or both. Oh, thanks, Scarlett. We saw that you want to be on the gap analysis work group. And if somebody knows already, you can put that in the chat and we'll have a record of it. So we won't pester you with more emails. Okay. Well, thank you very much for participating and for volunteering and for the comments that have been shared and the chat items that have been shared. I really appreciate the time you're all taking to serve on this council, and we look forward to working with you between meetings. At this point, we're going to open it up for public comment, unless any of the council members have any other. And Maria, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Okay. I'm happy to step in. Thank you so much, Susan. Right out the gate, I know that Rachel, you've had your hand raised for a long time, and I just want to thank you for being patient. Thank you for hanging on, and we'll open it for you first. I do want to say kind of a couple of reminders. If you're joining us by phone, you can join the queue to be unmuted for your comment by pressing *9. If you are on the Zoom webinar platform, there is a raise hand icon on your toolbar. And of course, we always welcome public comment in the Q&A. There should be an icon for that. And just a gentle reminder that this is really a public comment period. So we'll take that into public record, but we want to remind folks who are joining us that committee members are unable to take questions during this period. Okay, so Rachel, we've opened your line. You'll still have to unmute yourself, but we're ready to hear from you.
I think I did that. Am I unmuted?
You're good to go.
I love technology. Good afternoon. I am Rachel Ford. I am a U.S. Air Force disabled veteran. I am the friend and family member of persons with disabilities and seniors. I am about to turn 60. I am retired from 30 years in health and social services, including working for Council Member Marty Emoto, Executive Director of CDCAN, whom I represented on the California Department of Justice Committee Against Crimes Against Persons with Disabilities. This committee is now disbanded due to political climate changes beginning at the beginning of the 21st century. I want to thank everyone who had a hand in developing this council. I would especially like to commend Chief Assistant Attorney General Jennifer Euler for heading the issue with the DOJ. I would like to thank Council Member Marty Emoto for his unceasing efforts to inform and educate this community through his website, emails, where I learned about this meeting, teleconferences, and public support. I would like to close by making a few suggestions which may help to improve your future meetings. All materials put on the screen should be in size 14 font or larger as recommended by the ADA. The acronyms that are used should be spelled out in print or verbally, as many people attending these meetings come from a variety of backgrounds. And you might want to enlist the representation from the Department of Justice, as these issues affect military members, veterans, and family members as well. Thank you again for ensuring that the Elder and Disability Justice Committee came to fruition, and I look forward to being able to access the slides for this webinar online, and I would volunteer for a work group.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Those are great suggestions. Okay, Jeffrey, your line has been open.
My name's Jeff Tartagia. I'm an advocate. With Kim Wade, it was CalFresh. Then it was dealing with the master plan on aging. With Dr. Galway, it was the master plan on aging. And as he's known, he's heard a number of comments from me about, you need the representatives. I will use the example right now. Marty gave me the information so that I could be here with this meeting. Yesterday on the interagency first meeting, I got that from the NBC locally here. So encourage, if you want more public participation, put the word out there. Yes, I agree with what I've heard there before, but I will also use the example right now is that this last year I have had a customer or community manager turn around and disregard somebody on SSI, again, of senior age, because I'm in a senior type project. And I've had somebody that was kicked out because they had a, shall we say, mental issue, and they're kicked out. So both of them are out there homeless on the street. And one of the things I see that hopefully you as Department of Aging will interact with the interagency about what's going on with homeless, but I see nothing in your regards to how you address homeless issues up and down the state. And that is a concern just as well as housing as you work on these various things. And yes, if you need me to volunteer after, should we say Monday's vote with the assembly floor, I will know what measures are going forth and what to be involved with. I've been pretty busy trying to get the AB 1400 and the AB 1416 and other measures going forth. And I thank you for this. It has been helpful, but I also say to you is that there's a lot of data that needs to be collected. And at the same time, how you get out of silos is you talk to everybody and get the word out. But also you need to be accountable and see what you're getting in the way of responses back. And this is just starting, but if you don't start at the beginning, you will leave out the people that you're affecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Always lovely to hear from you. Sheila, your line has been opened.
Good afternoon. My name is Shella Komin Dumong, and I am the mom of someone who has Down syndrome, served in the regional center system. I'm also the executive director of an agency called Chance Housing, and we do housing access services for people with disabilities, including developmental disabilities and seniors, elders, Californians. I'm also on the Developmental Services Task Force. I just want to thank you all for such a great meeting. I learned so much. I took copious notes. This is my first introduction to many of you, and I'm thrilled to be able to know that this is the first meeting. There are going to be many more to come. So much of what I heard today spoke to me personally because I have a adult child who has Down syndrome, who is also a transgendered male, and recently went through a situation of harassment and abuse in a community, his apartment. And, I have had this experience of trying to access justice. I made an SIR report, which is a special incident report through the Department of Developmental Services. I made an APS report. I made 5 police reports at the local police department. I reported it to HUD as a voucher violation. I sought VAWA protections, Violence Against Women's Act protections, in trying to find a different housing unit for Simone. And I'm not sure what data was collected in all of that. I don't know if I missed the right door that we could have entered, but maybe the coordinating council, in terms of people reporting harassment, abuse, can take the no wrong door approach. In assessing the landscape of what justice resources are out there, really spoke to me. And I think it's going to be incredibly, critically important work of the council. And I might just add that I was never contacted by anyone, and the problem was only resolved when we moved Simone. Maybe this is a result of how elders with cognitive disabilities and people with intellectual disabilities are sort of underserved across all of the justice and reporting systems, and I urge you to take a look at that. Also, I offer myself to participate in any way someone might see fit on the issue of elder and disability justice and community-based housing. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Shella. Thank you so much. We're going to go to Beth Burt. Beth, your line is open.
Thank you. My name is Beth Burt. I am the Executive Director at the Autism Society in the Inland Empire, which serves Riverside and San Bernardino County. I'm also a proud parent of a young man with autism and another young man that has some mental health issues. So thank you. Like Shella, this was my first introduction to many of you, and I was so excited and encouraged to hear a conversation at the state level that we've been having locally for the last few years. So thank you. You encouraged my heart, and I love to see the progress being made. I hope this was the first meeting. I hope I'm at the last meeting where you can announce all the wonderful things that have been accomplished and legislative and policy changes that have been made. So thank you. I wanted to add that with our work, we've last year developed law enforcement training that was approved by the state. And one of the issues we're seeing that you talked about today is the data collection. And, as we know, as you've met one person with autism or any disability, you've met one person. And what we're finding with the data collection, that it tends to lump people with disabilities in one big bucket, which doesn't really help us when we're looking at mental health needs versus developmental disability needs versus maybe a senior's needs. And so when you're looking at data collection, I ask that maybe get into some disaggregated data where you can kind of ferry out some of the specific issues so we can address the needs of the community. So thank you, and just good luck to you all, and thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you, Beth. Really glad you could join us today. Judy Mark.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me comment. My name is Judy Mark. I'm the president of Disability Voices United, which is a statewide advocacy organization directed by and for people with disabilities and their family members. This is such an important committee, and I just wanted to mention a couple of things. The first one is that I know that it is called both elder justice and disability justice, but it does seem to me to be a bit heavy on the elder justice stuff and a little less heavy on the disability justice stuff, and really hope that we can focus in on some of the specific needs of people with disabilities, particularly those who are non-speaking or use alternative ways to communicate, especially because they're not always able to report when abuse has happened. They're not able to really be able, or even if they can report it, sometimes their communication is not respected and not considered valid at times. So I'm really hoping that some of your work groups can look at those issues as well. And then the other piece that I just wanted to mention is that I noticed that you're likely to be talking about conservatorships at some point over this process. And there's a whole group of us who are really involved in reforming the conservatorship system in California, that, you know, we want to really focus on supported decision-making and other opportunities for people to avoid conservatorship. We're seeing that is an area where there is a lot of abuse that takes place, that it really crosses that lines between the aging community, where we're seeing elder people getting taken advantage of, as well as people, many of whom are in the developmental disability community, who are put into these lifetime conservatorships where they lose all their civil rights. And when we know that there are definitely ways to keep the courts out of their lives and to do other kinds of things. So hoping that there is a time when you want to, when you're going to really be digging into that. We have a big coalition of really great civil rights, disability rights, aging rights organizations that have signed on to a bill that we're pushing forward this year, and happy to have that discussion when it's the right time. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, Liz Fuller.
Hi, how is everybody doing today? Friday, you guys do these meetings. I just wanted to say that I'm really, really inspired, like I am always, with what you're doing with the Department of Aging, and I think that this is no different. I'm excited because I feel like the aging and disability space is finally having some expansion, where we aren't trying to take everything on in one space, but what's important here, you guys are really giving it your focus. Again, you're all very, very collegial. You really are on point in all of the feedback that I heard from stakeholders. And I really am grateful that one of your expected outcomes is some really clear feedback for the legislature. I think that it could be helpful for you to know what's going to be moving in the next year, so that as you're all building on what you think needs to change. And then also to really, I loved the part that was, or the speaker who said they're really interested to know what's already been done. And I think what you'd find is there are some really great mandates that are in state statutes, but they've been underfunded or completely unfunded. And that's why change is not progressing. I want to be quick here. I just wanted to encourage you not to lose your momentum and to stay focused. I think that the advocates in this space are so accustomed to showing gratitude and then getting in the back of the line. And I just encourage you to remain at the front and keep vocal about the issues that are impacting the populations that you serve. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Always lovely to hear from you, and some really good thoughts there. I encourage others who want to be unmuted for a comment to go ahead and raise their hands, or if you're joining by phone, that key is *9, and that will add you to the queue. I want to bounce over to some of the comments that were submitted through Q&A and just do a highlights. I won't read them verbatim, but just know that they are on public record. So Randy Hicks asks about new quality assurance fees for skilled nursing facilities, whether those are going to be reinstated or new fees will be put in place. Joanne, who is someone who worked with vulnerable populations for many years, wanted to point out that rights have been a usable barrier to access to justice. Individuals with cognitive disabilities need education on what is a healthy relationship and what is a not healthy relationship and or interaction. Julie wants to point out secret settlements covering up abuse, and she shares a link to a resolution prioritized by California Dems. Sheila and I think a couple of others were asking for slides, and that will be made available on the California Health and Human Services Adult and Elder Justice Coordinating Council page. And I think we can share that in the chat as well before we log off. Lots of support for building out the landscape map inventory. Dr. Thea Hurst talks about the need for uniformity in terminology, definition, and data collection. Thank you. And we have folks who are volunteering from the public to join some of those working groups, and we'll record that. And with that, I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm not seeing any additional public comments. So I will pass it back over to Director DeMorris for any closing thoughts.
Thank you so much, Maria, for facilitating the questions. And thank you, Rachel, Jeff, Beth, Shella, Judy, Liz, for your questions and your comments. You really reminded us why we are here, and it takes us back to the beginning about person-centered, data-driven, and equity focused. So thank you so much for staying on until the very end so that we could hear from you. And to those who entered in the Q&A, thank you also for your comments. So to this group, we get to end Friday on a high note because I'm very inspired by our time together today, encouraged by what's ahead for this coordinating council, most appreciative of the council members for applying to serve on this group and accepting your nomination when you were asked to join, and for being here today and contributing and participating in the meeting. So thank you all. And it looks like Gloria may have one final thought for us. Gloria?
Hi. Yes, what I was wondering is if there's going to be an opportunity to join any other kind of groups besides what we're here now and what we're doing now. But I noticed that you had a couple of volunteers for like the gap and data collection. So since I didn't actually put my hand up for anything, is there anything else that the ones that didn't volunteer for those specific projects, are we going to be getting paperwork or documents to read, or how do we stay involved?
Yes, Gloria, that's a wonderful question. So for members of the coordinating council, there are 22 of you. We will follow up after this meeting with an email to all of you, and we will lay out the next steps for you. As a reminder, your next meeting is in April, so we hope everyone returns for the April meeting. And then there will be several activities between now and April that you will be invited to as members of this council. So you will receive emails from Amanda, and you'll be given the opportunity to join one of those 2 work groups.
And I would also like to say that I'm a mom with a son who has an intellectual disability, and an advocate, of course. And I was with my mother for 92 years. I mean, I took care of her for, seems like, all my life, you know. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. She was healthy and young, but I'm just saying that she got older, you know. So that's all that I wanted to say.
Well, I see why you were selected to serve on this council because of your experience with your mom and your own child. So thank you, Gloria, for those final thoughts. Thank you to everyone who was here today, our state partners especially, and we look forward to the work ahead. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye-bye.
God bless.